We are living in unprecedented times. Not only have we entered the age of Aquarius, but we've entered the age of AI. Humanity is about to undergo the most dramatic transformation ever, and I believe that makes it the perfect time for us to address the global mental health crisis. I believe it is through raising human consciousness that we gift people with the tools they need for emotional and mental mastery. Hi, I'm spiritual teacher and speaker, Shaman Isis, and I'm on a one-woman mission to raise human consciousness by teaching spiritual practices and sharing incredible people's heroes' journeys. Join me on Glow Up with Shaman Isis for inspiration for your hero's journey. If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses.
Well, hello, and welcome to Glow Up with Shaman Isis. I am psyched for today's show. I have a good friend with me today, author, spiritual teacher, and mindset coach.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that's
How,
it. You got it.
Howard, the amazing Howard Falco. Welcome, Howard. I'm so glad to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, Cynthia. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. I want to get to all the juicy stuff about your journey, and then I know you have a new book out, so of course we have to talk about the book. But if you could, just share a little bit about your practice to start off, and then we'll get into your journey.
Yeah. So I'm a spiritual teacher, author, mindset coach. I've written 3 books on the nature of self-awareness and the mind and the power of the mind. I've worked with hundreds, thousands actually, of people over the last 20 years, helping them to understand the power that they have to direct the narrative of their life and how life begins to meet them with that narrative and flow with that narrative. And so this has worked for everyday individuals going through anxiety, depression, everything you can imagine, everything you can't imagine. And then I've also worked with athletes at the college and professional level in all the sports, helping them to get their mind in a place where more of their talent can flow freely, unrestricted, and so they can sort of get out of their own way, reduce the amount of limiting beliefs they have so that they can achieve the performance they're looking for, more of their potential and peak performance.
That sounds exciting. I have to hear about your. We've talked about some other. We've done an episode about a year and a half ago, which is one of my most
Yeah.
popular episodes, mind you. And
Oh, that's awesome. That's
um,
great.
and we didn't get a chance to really get too much into your journey, but I really would love to share with the audience. So one of the things I try really hard on this show is to be able to interview people who know those key moments, who've healed, who've leveled up, who've moved on, and be able to share with people so that they can appreciate the ability that they have themselves for changing their own lives. So, can you tell our audience a little bit about kind of your journey to spiritual guru?
Sure, I'll talk about the journey to what opened the door to all this wisdom and clarity that allows me to work in a way that's really effective for my own life and for the life of others. Um, the beginning of the story is I was always very curious about the nature of life and existence, or in general. In class, in grammar school, I was the one always raising my hand, challenging the teacher, wanting to understand the whys, not just be told, don't tell me, help me understand why, so that I could take that wisdom with me. Um, I've told this story many times, but it was really, truly sparked the first time I was on a camping trip into deep nature. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was taken by my aunt and uncle on a trip to northern Minnesota, which was 10 miles. We were at this remote lake, like out of a movie, really, with this rustic cabin on a lake. We were less than 10 miles from the Canadian border. We got there. It was a moonless night, so it was extremely dark. And everybody went to sleep after the 10-hour car ride, and I wanted to explore. And so at 14, I went out the cabin door, walked to the end of this old creaky dock, and just stared into this darkness. And the first thing that just hit me like a ton of bricks was the sound of silence. I'd never experienced that oxymoron before. And it stunned me. It was an out of body experience. And the lake was as placid as could be. It wasn't moving. It was still, there wasn't a breath of wind. And then I started to see what looked like lights shining in one part of the lake and then another part. And then I realized these lights were shining over the entire lake and I didn't know what it was. And then I looked up. And when I looked up in that moment, everything changed because I could not believe the amount of stars that were in the night sky. There were more stars in the sky, I believe, than there was space in between them, as I write in the introduction to all my books. And it was a breathtaking moment. And what I mean by breathtaking, we hear that term a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
usually it's an inhale. But this was a breathtaking moment, an exhale where all the breath left my body. And for a moment of stillness, I, everything sort of changed in that moment when I looked up. I was just frozen in time. And thousands of questions filled my mind on the nature of existence. And I just laid down on the dock, put my hands behind my head, and for like what seemed hours, just stared at the Milky Way, at the galaxies, the stars, and the what I could see potential satellite moving across that looked like a star moving. I mean, it was mind blowing. So I left that moment on even a deeper quest to understand life and meaning. And then I'll fast forward the story. In my mid 30s, I thought I had everything I needed to be happy. I got my education, put myself through school, left home when I was 18 and went out west, got married, fell in love, had two kids, was starting to do okay, bought our first home. And yet I was as more unsettled than I've ever been. And I thought, this is crazy. You're supposed to be happy when you start to build all these things that are the checklist on the American dream. And I thought, okay, the last thing is money, millions of dollars. But one day it hit me that I was working with a lot of people that had endless amounts of money and they weren't happy. And when that hit me, Cynthia, that's what shook me to the ground where I said, I don't know how I'm going to go on and live another day of life without understanding. And so I threw my arms up and hands up to the sky and I said, life, universe, God, which I had no concept of or understanding, I'm ready to understand how life works. Show me the answers. I want them now. I can't go another day. Then I let it go, went back into my life. 2 weeks later, I'm in a class for trading the markets. I had read a book on the psychology of trading markets. I was in the finance business at the time. And I was amazed that the guy was teaching this from this idea that you're creating the whole experience, or whether you make money or lose money by what you choose, what your thoughts are, what your reactions are, what vehicle you choose, how much money you put in, when you get out. And it just hit me, Cynthia, that we're doing this for life every day. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
creating the mindset and the experience that we have. But what was so stunning about that was that I realized it wasn't just for finance, being for life. That means that the control was in me. It wasn't on anything external that I had to gain. And it was just such a relief to know that this room that I had been in that was windowless and doorless now had a window or a door. I just had to figure out how to do it, but I knew it was there now. And then the second thing that really blew my mind was that I had asked these questions 2 weeks ago to life. And here life was answering me by connecting with me on insight and information in that moment. And I realized that this is how it works. Every day of our life, life's talking to us. And when the more present and the more mindful we are, the more we hear it, the more we gain the information that life's trying to get to us because it's trying to work with us to help us survive. Whatever we determine we need to do to create, life is trying to get the awareness to us. And so I was in this present state. And then to wrap this up 6 months later, I had an experience where information was just dropping into my mind moment by moment. There was no time anymore between question and answer. And I got this great awakening and understanding that changed everything. And that's why I wrote my first book. I left my job and wrote I Am. And that in I Am is everything that was sort of downloaded or revealed in this expansion of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
which I felt so graced and humbled. I knew I was going to be a servant of this awareness the rest of my existence. And that's all I was going to do was just serve it. And that's what I have done since 2002 for 23 years now, almost 23 years, 22 and a half years of sharing and putting this wisdom out into the discourse. And I feel just blessed beyond belief. So that's the short story, Cynthia.
I love that. I love that you had. How old were you when you had that existential conversation?
So I asked those questions, 35. It was right around my
Oh,
35th birthday.
the one by the lake.
Oh, I was 14.
Yeah, that seems to be 13, 14 seems to be like 12 to 14 seems to be like a real like anyone who's gonna it seems have the first existential conversation. It seems like that's when they happen because that's the same thing. It happened for me at 13, like staring at the stars and being like, "Oh, my mind is being blown."
Yeah, it's hard not to when you look at that. And when you see it in such a remote area where every star is shining,
Oh,
it's your mind just wiggles on it. It's just, how is that over our head every night? And we don't understand more yet. And that's what drove me to understand more.
yeah. I love that you said servant of this awareness. Oh, that's so good. It was juicy. I was like, "Oh, I can taste that."
Yeah,
It's
I
so
do. I feel
true.
humbled. Humble servant is what I feel like.
Do you have any advice for people who find, because a lot of people are having spiritual awakenings. It's like a big thing, where we've entered the age of Aquarius happening at the same time as the age of AI, which I do not think is an accident. I think that we need that age of Aquarius to be able to have enough consciousness, higher consciousness on the planet to be able
Hmm.
to
To deal with
manage.
it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Do you have any, because there's so many people who are going through those kinds of existential conversations and they're coming to a new awareness of what's been going on in our world for a long time. I know 3 years ago when I talked about the financial situation in America and questioned the American dream and what was going on with all our money, people were like, "You sound like a conspiracy theorist." But now we're all seeing a lot of truths. What would your advice? Something a very long way of asking what your advice would
Yeah.
be.
You mean in terms of when they have these awakenings, what my advice to
Yeah.
them is? So
Yeah.
the litmus test on the awakening is whether or not you feel more of a sense of unity with life, mankind, with people, whether or not you see more of the perfection of what's happening, whether or not you understand how much life is connected to you and helping you to see more of your worth, perfection, love, self-respect, self-honor in you. Whether or not you see more forgiveness in others through the understanding of your own self. Um, there's a quote. My son said something when I saw him. He came in town last week, and he said, "Well, Dad," he's like, I've learned to just always assume good intent with people. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound because we've lost our way in that, right? We've gotten so scared of everything. We're always assuming negative intent, and we're spreading it across millions of people. Um, you're not on the spiritual path then. You're off the spiritual path when that becomes the mindset because it's taking you to a darker place when what spiritual awakening does is it allows you to see infinite possibility. It allows you to see that the universe is working to shed awareness. And yeah, we go through ups and downs through that process. But what I would tell anybody on this path is if you're going down a path where it gets darker, you're on the wrong path. And there's more to be learned and understood. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't dark things in the world that happen because there are. But to be able to see things from a broader perspective and to see that everybody, this doesn't condone anything, but that everybody's doing the best they can in what they're trying to do based on who they think they are versus what the truth is about them. It can help with your energy, your mindset, and the way you carry yourself in the world. And even most importantly, Cynthia, what comes back to you in terms of your own experience. Because if it's shrouded in negativity, that aura, that energy is going to attract that because life has to give you the experience of what you believe is true, not what you think is
Ooh,
true, but what you believe is true. That's why self awareness is so important. So for me, in that experience, I had to drop my beliefs and my conditioning in order to have something else revealed. And I mean, these were deep truths and beliefs about life.
yeah.
Um,
And that's a
like,
process. That is not, you don't just go, "Oh, I need to drop these beliefs." I mean, for me, it took practice at
yeah.
seeing the new beliefs and releasing
Hmm.
the the built-in like system I had developed for understanding the world, which was really corrupted by cynicism. And
Yeah,
it
or
took
personal
practice.
experiences, trauma. Yeah, it can deep seed itself because you're trying to protect yourself, right? And so it's totally understandable that that would be the case. For me, I was at a point where I was ready to let anything go at that
Mhm.
point. There were certain beliefs I had that gave me boundary in life, like death exists. Therefore, I need to do everything I can for me before my time runs out. And when I, I realized that death doesn't exist, I mean, I'm throwing a big one out right now, but it was like, then I can, instead of be about me, I could be more about we because then, I'm here forever. So it's not a matter of if I'm going to exist. It's only a matter of how I'm going to choose to exist while I'm here, or while I'm here in this particular go around.
Um, do you do you do you practice any of the sort of spiritual practices that are like yoga or meditation to focus your energy? What's sort of your method for managing your energy?
Yeah. So, for me, when I'm off or I feel off a little bit, I take quiet time. I like silence. And I like to go into that meditative space that just a tiny little bit of recalibration, refocus, rebalance. When I get to that quiet place, I remember the grand infinite oneness of it all. And then everything else is a small detail that I don't want to sweat anymore, right? Because I realize something greater and more empowering. So that's something that I can do. Once in a while, I'll do yoga. I'm not a direct or consistent practitioner of yoga, but I do it once in a while. So those are a couple of the practices that I do. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I like to read. For me, the one sport I've hung on to in my life for my competitive side, just to stay grounded in something that I used to do. I used to be a competitive in all sports in my life, but I play golf. So, hitting golf balls for me at the end of the range when no one's there at 6 in the morning is like a very meditative process. It's
Yeah.
pure quiet. It's nature. So those are the type of things I do to ground myself.
Good. Yeah. It's so important. Going through all the stages of the spiritual journey, it's not for the weak at heart. I think a lot of people
No.
have a
That's a
misconception.
great point.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember when I first woke up in 2021 or 2022, I was so elated just to be awake that like that I coasted through like the next year just almost high off of my spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
And but interestingly enough, after I did a ton of work, it's that last it's the ego death and those really deeply rooted practices that are unhealthy thought habits that have really been like that's been a real brutal experience for me.
Yeah, spirituality, you made that's a great statement, Cynthia. It is not for the weak of heart because it is going to bring everything up. You're going to have to face everything. And the fear, the place your ego will go in its toolbox to prevent you from this expansion will be knee bending, gut wrenching, fear that takes you to the ground and tells you you can't and lies to you. And you're going to have to be prepared for that and get through that because you
Yeah.
can and you
I don't
will.
think there's enough conversation, honestly, about that aspect of it. I think we talk a lot about the
Dark night of the soul.
synchronicities, dark night of the soul. Yeah, those sort of
Hmm.
initial things, and it's kind of like we sort of drop off, but it really is. I mean, and I'm not trying to deter anybody from having a spiritual
No, but you
awakening,
just
but
want to be ready. Yeah,
yeah, just know that it you will lose a lot of people, places, and things. Some
potentially.
some
Yeah.
of them, some of them you may not want to lose, but it'll be for your best. And
Yes.
digging up the most deeply, I did not realize how deeply rooted my issues about societies, like things like nepotism and cronyism. Those are two things that I still struggle with not getting set off about.
Nepotism and cronyism. You mean in the world?
Yeah, like I still will like in terms of triggers that show me I still have healing to do. I still get occasionally triggered by what I can see as people being just handed thing opportunities in life, and that goes back to feeling like I had to work so hard for every opportunity.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. Yeah, that can, yeah, and it sticks with you when you go through life. Sometimes it doesn't shed all at once.
Yeah,
But then sometimes you can have a very big, powerful awakening that you get through it immediately, and you're able to transcend immediately through that. But sometimes it's layers that have to peel.
yeah. I think for me it was like definitely an onion. So what did you get a calling to go into spiritual teaching, or was it just a slow transition?
If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses.
Um, for me, the profound nature of the experience was so big that I couldn't keep it in my body. So it was like coming out of me, in terms of like speaking and teaching and writing. And it just, I felt like a letter carrier that had been given a huge letter and I had to deliver it. And I had to toe the line between proselytizing, evangelizing, and just putting it in a discourse. So I had to learn that because I wanted to run around and put my hands on the shoulders of every human being and say, hey, it's right in front of you here. I mean, like one of my favorite songs of all time says, your stairway lies on the whispering wind. I mean, that's how close it
Mm,
is to you. And so um, uh, that's that's what I knew that was my calling and that what I was going to do. And fortunately, in writing the books, they got out there in a big way. And I'm continuing on that path because there's more to talk about
yeah.
after 20 years. It's the world has changed and people are more open to this, and so there's a
Yeah.
new way of putting it out.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch over the last couple of years as so many people started to finally have conversations more openly about spirituality, and I love seeing the trend. I mean, it's really trending with younger generations, which I think is great because they need it with the mental health
Mm-hmm.
crisis.
Yep.
Yeah, that you brought up the ego death. The ego death is that's a brutal. that
Yeah.
was
So
that was
what?
brutal for me because
Yeah.
your ego will fight
Correct.
to
It's
stay.
designed to do that. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. So it's designed to protect and defend who you are. And so when these beliefs are under attack or they're being changed or they're dissolving, the ego wants to fight for their existence and it flares up with as much as it can, even some deep stuff in the bag of tricks that are usually connected with fear in order to do it. But it's not really ego death. Um, it's it's the change of what the ego's doing to support you.
I like that. Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who have so you mentioned those blocks. So like I know a lot of people have money blocks. They have,
Hmm.
they don't believe abundance, or they're trying to manifest things but they're really struggling with getting into that energy of being what that which they're trying to bring about. Do you have any advice for people who are struggling with that?
Um, what I would say is if you have blocks, the key is how badly do you want to get through it, right? How badly you really have to test yourself in terms of what you're looking to get to. And what I mean by test yourself is you have to ask yourself, does it still serve you to believe the thoughts you have that are giving you the blocks? Or can you replace some of these thoughts that of can't with can? Can you replace some of the ideas that you have in your head that have limited you with more of the truth of what's possible for you? You really have to dissect what it is that's keeping you blocked, and you really have to be honest with yourself.
Okay, that's great advice. So you've written 3 books now. Love it. I love it. Can you share sort of that author journey in ending with the new book?
Yeah. So the first book, I don't know if this is going to be audio or visual, but the first book was I
Both.
Am. Okay, great. So I Am, The Power of Discovering Who You Are is the first book. The second book, and that's a full book on self-awareness and self-understanding that reveals everything in my experience. They asked me to write a second book, and there was a piece edited out on time. So I wrote Time in a Bottle, which is how time works in your life. So that was the second book. And then for the last 10 years, I've been working on the new book, which is a result of everything I've worked on with individuals and how to break through and get to either the top level in sports or the what they want to in relationships or business or anything that they're dealing with that they've been, quote, as you say, blocked from because of their ego, which has kept them in sort of a constant loop, and how to break through that. And it's called Invincible: The Mindset of Infinite Potential and the Secret of Inevitable Success. This just came out recently. So I'm really excited about this piece of work. This is sort of I don't know, it's everything. I poured my soul into this. So that's what I've been working on. This is the new one that's coming out. I'm so honored to get a chance to talk with you about it, Cynthia, and share with your audience. But that book is an 8-step process to an expanded state of mind, a more empowered state of mind, a more mindful presence, and it leads you to become a more powerful creator.
I love that. I love the simplicity of the cover. It really lets you focus on what it's about. It's really
Yeah,
beautiful. But all
thank
your
you.
books are all beautiful. I'm a bit of a graphic arts snob, so
No, that's
you're-
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
uh,
I absolutely that's a great compliment from you. So thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, I'm excited because the presence of what they offer on the outside, I believe, has been delivered on the inside. That's what I'm most excited about as they turn the pages and you know, but you have to be ready, like you say, you have to be ready for this work because it's really going to challenge you on some things. But what's on the other side of that, Cynthia, as you know, is so beautiful and so comforting and so exciting and so empowering so that your presence and how you think and you're so aware of it when you go into life every day. And it just, it takes you to another level of being.
It really does. I've been on the journey now for 4 years, and uh, some of it was brutal but worth it. In facings, we like to tell ourselves stories about who or what we're about, and sometimes when you're when you're trying to evolve to the higher version of yourself, you're confronted with some aspects of yourself that you don't actually like very much. And that was hard for me because I had, I talk about a lot on the scale of consciousness. At the bottom of it, I lived in
Mm-hmm.
that energy of guilt and shame at the very bottom of Hawkins' consciousness scale for
Mm-hmm.
decades. And it was such a hard moment to see that on the chart and realize that I was at the very bottom of it when I had gifted myself with being this kind of person what was clearly going to be higher in the charts, and to see that my predominant energy was that of shame and guilt for such a long time. But once I broke through the other side of that and just accepted that that really was what it was, and that guilt and shame aren't about us doing something wrong necessarily. It's the way that we feel about the things that have occurred or happened in our life.
Exactly. Wow. Well said. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a powerful moment. And I still, I try to talk really openly about the journey not being complete, because it's not. It's a lifetime journey. And I think sometimes with spirit, both of us are spiritual teachers. Sometimes I get a little bit irritated with the spiritual community because there's such a focus on perfection and behaving. It's almost like, well, we're back in church now again, where we're telling people to be perfect.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. And a point on that I want to make is that it's like this, yeah, we have to be perfect when we already are in terms of our
Ooh.
unfolding. Because at each moment we're doing the best we can. And the reason that guilt, shame, and regret are such poisons to the mind is because they're not who you are, they're who you were in terms of the way you saw the past, right? Or what you did. That
Mm-hmm.
just gave you reflection on who you don't want to be. But to carry it into this moment is to poison this moment and who you are. Because in this
Mm.
moment, you can renew the spirit of your mind. You can renew your soul. You can redefine who you choose to be in this moment. And it can be free of shame and free of guilt, and free of remorse, um, and free of regret, where you just say, I forgive my former self. That was the best I had in that moment because if I could have done better, I would have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to own this moment with the new understanding of who I am. One who is free
Mm.
of guilt, shame, and regret, and one who sees and believes in more worth and possibility. That's the goal of this book.
I love that. Yeah, well, I was going to say, who's this a good book for? Besides everybody.
I love that. You got to that. You're so intuitive. Um, so, who's this a good book for? It's for anybody who's looking for the deepest, most life-changing wisdom they can find. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful stuff out there from a lot of people, including yourself. But people that are on a path that want to really understand the mechanics of how life comes together, how to release the past, how to step into the present moment and own the ego and direct the ego, how to get rid of limiting beliefs, how to own self-respect, self-awareness, and self-worth, and then how to use the power of I am then from that moment from a more authentic, grounded belief in who you are so that it can really create for you. And then, step 7 is how to master the traps and negativity of life and how when you have to go back into life with this new thing, but with this new understanding and new identity, but life's still going to be there with all its negativity and all its traps. And it's probably going to increase because you're shining more light. So it's darkness might try and come a little harder at you. But as I say in the book, light will always overcome the darkness, but darkness can never overcome the light. So,
Hmm.
so anyway,
It's
so it prepares you for that. So that's who
yeah,
it's for. Athletes, individuals, anybody going through anything in life that's ready for some new insight to empower their mind. That's it.
love that. Very beautifully said. You're always so well spoken.
Mm,
You can tell how
thank you.
much experience you have because it just comes so. It's just a gift that comes so natural to you. If people
Thank you.
wanted to order your books and learn more about you, where would they go?
Yeah, so Invincible is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and at any independent bookstore. And if they don't have it at your independent bookstore, please let them know about it. So you can get it there. My website is howardfalco.com, and you can follow me there or follow me on Instagram where I put up daily inspirational stuff and teachings. So those are the main places. Yeah, it should be
Oh,
available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and any independent store.
ah, thank you, Howard. I'm so glad that we got a chance to catch up and to talk about your new book, Invincible. Beautiful name. I love the word.
Thank you.
I'm hearing a song in my head.
Yeah, it's Pep Benatar, is it?
Yeah,
Invincible?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly what it is. What can I say?
Yeah.
I'm a kid of the '80s.
Yeah, me too. So I'm right there with you. But Cynthia, thank you so much for having me on. I truly appreciate you and your beautiful energy. And yeah, it's been an honor to talk to you, and it's always fun to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Howard. You guys heard it here. Go check out Howard Falco's Invincible. And go check out his website, howardfalco.com. If you are just watching the show or listening to the show for the first time, well, hello and welcome. I'm Shaman Isis, your spiritual teacher and also three-time author. If you are not familiar with my work, go check out shamanisis.com, and you can see my books there. You can see my Glow Up collection of courses and books and meditations, and of course my magazine Soul Tech. So go check it out. Free newsletter. You must sign up for it, especially if you want event invitations to the events I do around the world. Thank you so much for stopping by. And if you're not already subscribed, what are you thinking? Thanks, you guys, for
Well,
listening and have an amazing day. Thank you, Howard.
thank you.
If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses.